How's this possible? Paul says, God sent His own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. And for sin, He condemned sin in the flesh. So how is there no condemnation for those who are in Christ? Not because God is unjust and looks at sin and says, that's no big deal. That's okay. I'll forgive you. I'll step back. Because He says, it's such a big deal. I'm going to send my Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, meaning Jesus became a man. The God of the universe stepped into the earth, put on flesh and blood, got tired, got sick, was tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin, so that on the cross He would be condemned in our place, and all of our sin would be piled on Him, and He would absorb that debt, and He would take the cup of God's wrath, and He would drink it, and He would turn it upside down and slam it on the table and say, it is finished. There's no condemnation in Christ because the condemnation has already been taken out on Christ. This is the good news of the gospel of Jesus. It's good news. It's done. We have no condemnation because Jesus was condemned for us. And I want to show you the difference between conviction and condemnation. Go ahead and go to that next one, Chase. We're going to be posting this online this week, and I want you to get this. I want to print some of these off to give them to you and us to live in this reality. There's such a difference between the saint who is convicted and the sinner who is condemned. Conviction is from God, and condemnation is from Satan. Conviction leads to life, and condemnation leads to despair. Conviction ends in joy, and condemnation ends in sorrow. Conviction makes us want to change. Condemnation makes us think we can't change. Conviction leads to new identity in Christ, and condemnation leads to old identity in sin. Conviction brings specific awareness of sin, and condemnation brings vague uncertainty about sin. Conviction looks to Jesus. Condemnation looks to self. Conviction is a blessing, and condemnation is a burden. Saints, we're not condemned because Jesus was for us, but we are convicted. Receive that as a blessing. Don't reject that. Don't think that something's going wrong because you realize that you've sinned, but rejoice and look up to Jesus. When you sin, you'll be convicted, and you have two options. You can either look into self, which leads to condemnation, or you can look up to Jesus. It leads to freedom because He's already taken the condemnation. And when you sin and you're convicted, you have an opportunity right then to start preaching the gospel to yourself, proclaiming the truth of it. If even when we sin, we go, you know what? I'm still a saint in Christ. Your mind's going to start working and going, I shouldn't be. How does this work? I should be condemned, but Jesus was condemned for me in my place. This is what we mean when we say preach the gospel to yourself all of the time. When you sin, don't look into self, but look up to Jesus who took care of your sin on the cross. Word?